Welcome everyone to the Acquisition Community of Interest March monthly meeting. Today we have the honor of working with the Emerging Tech COI as well as our Acquisition COI leadership team. So first, the Acquisition COI leadership team. This is our team right here. We have Jaime Gracia from the IRS as our government chair, Mary Redding from SSA as our government vice chair, Julie Dixon from Booz Allen Hamilton as our industry chair, Kevin Ewell Page from Deloitte as our industry vice chair, myself, Nicole Santero from Booz Allen as communications chair, Lisa Zellers from Arbor Consulting as our programs chair, and Kayla Reed from Deloitte as our logistics lead. I did include the link for our LinkedIn page here. We typically put all the events, the registration links, the description at that LinkedIn site. So go ahead and follow us and you can stay up to date on all of our events. And I will mention that the mission, which I'm reading, I haven't memorized yet, but I'm working on that, is to connect government and industry to new ideas and approaches to improve federal acquisition in a form that enables collaboration, encourages exploration and innovation, and generates results that have enduring impact. And I will pass it over to Todd Hager to introduce the Emerging Tech COI.
Great, thank you. We're thrilled to be here with you. We've done a few things off and on with the Acquisition COI, and this is nice for us to get back together again. But my name is Todd Hager. I'm Vice President of Macro Solutions, but I'm also the industry chair for the Emerging Technology Community of Interest. We in the Emerging Tech Community of Interest have actually do most of our work at the working group level, and we have a variety of working groups out there: blockchain working group, AI working group, intelligent automation, DevOps, and IoT. We've just added a sixth knowledge group focused on quantum technology, and that is something that has been in the makings for a while now. And they've actually hosted a session for us as well too, and it was very, very helpful. A lot of intersectionality with, especially with the security folks too, to get prepared for the inevitable change that will happen once quantum computers come into existence. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll show you the folks who are involved in the Emerging Tech COI. And I kind of liked how you showed yours with acquisition with the pictures. That was great. It's nice to have a face with a name here. Unfortunately, we don't have that, but we do have a lot of folks involved. And like I mentioned before, the working groups have their own chairs as well too. But to start on the left side, I'm joined by Neil Chaudhry, who unfortunately isn't here today with us, but he's our government chair from GSA. Also, Rob Worman, who is with us, is a government vice chair with OGP and GSA. My industry vice chair, Frederick DeVals, has been with us for many, many years and helped to form the very first working group with the blockchain working group. And I think you know Jackie French, who is all things communications within emerging tech, and really just keeps us on the straight and narrow, which is great. We've got a few other folks to round out the list there, working on from a big picture perspective of the ET. On the working group side, we've got a variety of folks over there as well too, just so that if there's any interest in the audience to either sort of find out what's going on in the working groups or participate in some of those activities, I just want to let you know that we're in the process right now of revamping the ACT-IAC site that has all of these working groups in there. In the interim, please reach out to Jackie or me, and we'll be happy to get you connected with the right folks. And just because I couldn't let this go, we are looking for a quantum knowledge practice government chair as well. That's in red down there at the bottom. As we go to the next slide. And I'm going to give you just a few updates from ACT-IAC. Nancy Delanoche would normally provide these for us, but she is away this week. So right now, as she put in this update, ACT-IAC has published 3 new white papers from the Health COI, another from the Customer Experience COI, and lastly, a final one from the IT M&M COI as well. Just to add on to that, we're going to be releasing 2 white papers very soon too, one from the AI working group and another from the blockchain working group. And then lastly, I want to make sure that all of you are aware that we've got a 3-day event scheduled. This is a hybrid event with an in-person component in Cambridge, Maryland. It's Emerging Technology and Innovation Conference. It looks to be a very strong conference focused on the strategy and getting prepared for bringing emerging technology within government agencies. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa, who's going to get us introduced here. Thanks so much, Lisa.
And Lisa, if you're talking, looks like you're on mute.
Thanks. You'd think by now I would be a little better. So we're honored to have the Emerging Tech COI here today and love that they're looking for acquisition-minded feedback on the NUCSL pilot. So Anil serves as the Emerging Tech COI's government chair and has 20 years of progressive leadership experience in technology delivery, operations, and program management. As a core member of the Artificial Intelligence COI at GSA, Chaudhry advises the federal agencies on establishing mature data governance and management practices. Unfortunately, Anil's running late and may or may not be able to join us later during this meeting, but he typically speaks from his role as the government chair on the ACT-IAC Emerging Technology COI as one of the driving forces behind the NUCSL. We are, however, joined by Robert Worman. Since 2016, Robert has worked as a program lead for strategy within the Office of Shared Services and Performance Improvement, OSPI, and the Office of Government-Wide Policy at GSA. OSPI works with federal agencies and industry to advance the planning and progress needed to help agencies towards operating as one federal enterprise and in making government work better through shared services. Robert previously served as COI of the Office Inspector General of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, where he led the implementation of IT supporting investigative and audit work across 45 field and headquarter offices. Robert also will be speaking today in his role as the government vice chair for the ACT-IAC Emerging Tech COI. Now, we are also lucky enough to have Jackie French, I think she's been mentioned twice already, here to kick off the NUCSL discussion. She serves as the communication chair for the Emerging Technology COI and is a senior associate for KPMG's federal advisory practice and a recent graduate of ACT-IAC's 2021 Voyagers program. She advises federal agencies on IT governance, federal acquisitions, policy analysis, and organizational transformation initiatives. She recently received her Master of Arts from Johns Hopkins. Now, Jackie will also be speaking today in her role as the communications chair for the ACT-IAC Emerging Tech COI. And I do want to just say that we are looking for advice. We'll have a couple Q&A breaks today. And we actually, at the very end of this presentation, are looking for participation from the audience. So pay attention and learn a little bit about what the NUCSL is, and then we'll get some feedback from you. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Lisa, and thank you for the introductions. And thank you to the COI leadership team for hosting us today. While it's the Emerging Technology COI presenting, this has certainly been a collaboration between acquisition and emerging technology, and the acquisition community is really at the heart of this. So we are very excited to share what we call a NUCSL with you today. It's an interesting sounding name, so we'll get to the acronym in a moment. But we launched the NUCSL pilot platform and white paper this February, so February 22nd, and getting more to the details of why this is so important to the acquisition community. The acquisition community is really at the heart of this, so we're looking forward to engaging everyone on the meeting today and continuing the conversation afterwards as we go from our pilot phase to the next phase. So we can go to the next slide. And I'll talk a little bit more about what a NUCSL is. And so the full name is a National Use Case and Solutions Library. The acronym is NUCSL, pronounced somewhat like NUSSLE. And so a NUCSL is really a place where you can see how emerging technologies are meeting mission, objectives, and goals across the government today. And so the NUCSL pilot platform is founded in a use case approach, a use case driven approach. And so the information we capture via the platform is very much technology focused. And we are building this out to incorporate research pieces, to incorporate other key areas like change management and otherwise cybersecurity, for example, that really play a key role in emerging technology use cases today. And so, as you can see, we call it a NUCSL, not the NUCSL. That is a feature, not a bug. So we want it to sound like a verb. A NUCSL, we see it as a philosophy, a way to go about finding emerging technologies that fit the government market. And we'll get more to how we see that process in and of itself. But we see a NUCSL as a verb whenever anyone thinks emerging technologies and wants to learn more about them, or wants to learn more about how you can find an emerging technology that fits the IT environment or just the general environment of your agency. We want folks to think, let's go to a NUCSL. We can go to the NUCSL. And so any agency can use a NUCSL. And share use cases across agencies and within their own agency. This is a tool that anyone can use, and it's something that we're hoping to drive adoption for over the next several months. So we can go to the next slide. So with the NUCSL, we launched both a pilot platform and a white paper. I'm going to speak to the pilot platform first. With the pilot platform, since we are anchored in a use case driven methodology, we capture information that relates to the type of organizations who are working with emerging technologies, both public and private. The life cycle phase that an emerging technology is in could be ideation, could be production. The type of technology. There's a diverse set of emerging technologies available today. They include artificial intelligence, intelligent automation, quantum computing, and so on and so forth, blockchain. And so we really want to be able to capture all these different technologies within the NUCSL. And we are focused on mapping the as-is and the to-be so that we can capture lessons learned, best practices, gaps that organizations should be aware of when they're moving toward identifying, selecting, and adopting an emerging technology. And we are working with organizations today to build out this information, including, for example, we have the Department of Homeland Security's Procurement Innovation Lab. We're working with the Department of Veterans Affairs National Artificial Intelligence Institute, and we have a lot more agencies working with us to gather these use cases and share them via a NUCSL. Most recently, and the big push we have right now is in regard to Executive Order 13960. And so this is focused on gathering use cases for artificial intelligence. And we have set up this platform so that agencies can come to the NUCSL and submit a use case and share it solely with their agency for government eyes only to view and edit and update the use case. We also have set up the platform so that agencies can come and submit use cases, review them with their agency, and then share it publicly. Or you can just submit a use case and share it publicly. And so we have a great team of volunteers who are working together to gather these use cases, refine them, make sure we're capturing the information that folks are looking for, and then publish them either for government eyes only or to the public. So we can go to the next slide. This is some of the feedback we've been collecting around emerging technology use cases. And so we've highlighted and read those areas that we're receiving a lot of feedback on. The data, it aligns with the qualitative pieces too. And so when organizations are looking for emerging technologies, they're really focused on the adoption feasibility of it. What does this look like within our IT environment? What does it look like when it comes to tangibly meeting mission objectives? How can we show that these technologies are actually helping us do so? And so that's a key component of what the NUCSL captures. Organizations are also focused on collaboration. The NUCSL offers points of contact that folks can reach out to across the government for each of the use cases submitted to find more information, to determine if there's ways that organizations can collaborate, whether through an interagency agreement or otherwise. And the NUCSL just serves as a really great resource for figuring out those different areas of collaboration that can occur. And then finally, we've received a lot of feedback that folks want to find those lessons learned, the best practices. How can we do this without, falling into different traps? And so going back to capturing the as-is and to-be state, this is really where we're hoping to pull in that information that can help agencies throughout the government determine what are the gaps we need to be aware of, and how can we do this in a way where we're not doing rework, and we can figure out those traps that we need to watch out for. And so the NUCSL captures all of this information and more, and we're hoping to work with volunteers to refine the pilot platform, and then also determine whether there's other key data points or pieces of information that should be included with the platform itself. And then in terms of the initiative overall, how we can help with driving adoption of the NUCSL within agencies. We can go to the next slide. And so these are the 4 areas that the NUCSL really offers value for. First, it is free, and there's no catch to that. It's fantastic that ACT-IAC exists, and they offer this for free to the public and private organizations. Anyone can use it. Anyone can submit a use case. There's a team. This is driven by volunteers from industry, government, universities, and we have a really fantastic team who is working to make this successful. And so it's open to anyone and everyone. The second area is this really offers information that has been a critical point in helping agencies identify technologies, and then also helping organizations building the technologies ensure they are building emerging technologies in a way that they fit a government market. And so this includes identifying those policy components, those regulatory components, legislative considerations that need to be taken into account when building a product for the government and the emerging technology space. A lot of these technologies are being built for the first time or built for the first time within specific agencies. And so having this information available to determine what needs to be considered when building the product to fit the government space is something we're hoping to fill that gap for both industry and government. Third, the tool, going back to this, we offer points of contact, and where this really comes into play is when there's use cases that maybe there's sensitive information you can't share publicly. With that in mind, what the NUCSL can do is offer a point of contact so that the use case is out there, folks can know that it's offered at a specific agency, and then if there's more information that they need to obtain from a government to government perspective, there's a contact available who you can reach out to discuss the use case in more detail. And then finally, one of the areas we're working on, this is a work in progress, and this is why we're here today and so excited to talk with the acquisition COI community and then the acquisition community in general, is capturing contractual language. So we're hoping that we can find that verbiage that really helps with the acquisition planning and market research phases of the acquisition lifecycle to guide folks and how you can assess technologies, identify technologies, and select them. And then along with this, the NUCSL really pairs with primers and playbooks that the Emerging Technology COI has developed over the last several years that cover a variety of different technologies in the emerging technology space, including artificial intelligence, intelligent automation, and blockchain technologies. So we can go to the next slide. So for the other component of this, the white paper, outside of the pilot platform, we also launched a white paper on February 22nd. It's titled Improving Emerging Technology Federal Acquisition Outcomes. It covers more of the policy pieces of a NUCSL initiative. And with this white paper, we have 4 key recommendations on the next slide that we'll go into in more detail. So we can go to the next slide, and I'll just speak to those really quick, and then I will hand it off to Robert. And so for the white paper, the first recommendation, we are hoping that the NUCSL can be incorporated into FAR Part 7. The second, we're hoping that Chief Technology Officers can be appointed across the government to oversee the use cases submitted to a NUCSL, and then also work with their teams to maintain the use cases over the long term. In terms of the role itself, Chief Technology Officer is more of a placeholder. So we're gathering feedback on that and talking through it more. And we're hoping to especially talk with the acquisition community around that recommendation. The third recommendation is successful use case submission for those use cases across the government where a emerging technology has been successfully piloted or successfully implemented. We would like it to be required that agencies submit those use cases to the NUCSL platform so that we can share it across government and with public and private organizations. And then finally, we're looking to find a home for the NUCSL, whether that's with a specific agency or a federation of agencies. And so we'll talk about that more in the subsequent slides. So we can go to the next slide, and I will pass the microphone to Robert.
Thanks, Jackie. So as Jackie mentioned, one of the first suggestions that came out of the white paper and the discussions that were had in the community is the more that the use of something like a NUCSL can be institutionalized across the federal enterprise through a construct like FAR Part 7, the more likely it is that people will be to use it. And so that was sort of the first finding and recommendation that came out of that white paper. We can go to the next slide. And we can go, Jackie, did you have anything that you wanted to add on this particular one?
I think this really, the only thing I would add is when it comes to the points of contact, product feasibility, potential interagency agreements, and the verbiage, these are really the key areas we're hoping to obtain feedback from the acquisition community on. When it comes to product feasibility, we want to know those key areas where you're hoping to find more information on the products. So we know funding is a big conversation, TMF, other areas like that where you can work on pilots and different initiatives. When it comes to emerging technologies, we want to help to provide that information. So examples like that, if there are key areas where we can gather data, we want to hear about those areas so that we can set up the platform to capture that data, and we can work with organizations to gather that information and data and upload it within these use cases. And so that with this recommendation, we would love feedback from the community on that. And that's the only thing I would add. I will pass it back to you, Rob.
Thanks, Jackie. We can go to the next slide. So another recommendation that came out of the discussions was to have chief technology officer appointments. And so this is the idea that any type of a body of work that you might have like this requires some degree of subject matter expertise at a number of different levels, inclusive of executive levels, as a CTO might provide, in terms of the curation and making sure that everything that is in there is useful and comports to federal electronic records management expectations. And so so one of the reasons why that's important is because not just within the federal enterprise from one agency to the next would we picture these use cases being captured and submitted, but also within agencies too. So as bureaus and components are working through their emerging technology projects, the use cases that they would submit in there would be informative, not just across the federal enterprise, but within their own respective departments. So the idea of having executive level subject matter expertise that would sort of serve as an authority and an extra set of eyes in ensuring that the NUCSL is delivering to the expectations of the community, both federal agencies as well as industry, is sort of a key success factor in being able to make this work well. Jackie, did you have anything else that you wanted to add on this slide?
Nothing for me.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. All right, so the next one was just the idea of submitting successful use cases. So I come from the shared services policy and performance management part of the federal government. And one of the organizing principles we have is that generally speaking, the agencies are more alike than they are different. Similarly, could be said as well for the implementation of emerging technologies, that there's certainly a fair degree of commonality in the lessons that are learned and in the types of projects that are taken on from one agency to the next. And so the idea of having this type of a solution came out as one of the recommendations. And it was also put forward in that executive order 13960 around artificial intelligence, which had a couple of things in there. There were some recommendations around policy. There were some having common policy around AI, having common principles around how to do AI, as well as some workforce considerations. But the fourth piece of that EO was around having this use case submission expectation. So agencies are expected to publish their use cases. And so that then puts forward the question, how would they actually do that? Because there's lots of ways that an agency might publish a use case, but wouldn't it make sense if we are a broader community of federal agencies, as well as in the work that industry does and academia, to have a single repository for this? And so from this executive order and from the thinking around how this would actually work was sort of born this idea of having the NUCSL. And Jackie, did you have anything else that you wanted to add for this one?
So on the ground, we have a lot of volunteers who are eager to help with gathering these artificial intelligence use cases. We are working with several agencies, as mentioned before, on gathering these use cases and having the NUCSL serve as a tool where the artificial intelligence use cases can be shared for government eyes only for review and updates. And then once it's been updated within the NUCSL, it can just simply be published publicly. And so it removes a lot of the steps that come with needing to share the use cases and update them and then finding a place to publish them to the public. With a NUCSL, you can just submit it, review it with your agency, and then once it's ready for public publishing, we will publish it to the NUCSL, and then it'll be available there. And so Lisa will go more into the search function we have available, as well as the submission process. But it's pretty seamless, pretty simple, and we'll talk about it more in the subsequent slides.
Thanks, Jackie. We can go to the next slide. Thanks. So sort of the fourth and final recommendation that came out of this was the idea of having an agency sponsor. So as Jackie mentioned, right now it is hosted on the ACT-IAC platform, and you can today, as an industry partner or as an agency, begin submitting use cases, see what's in there, and start using it. But there's sort of some long-term thinking around what other models have worked well for being able to sort of sponsor and host and maintain this type of a solution for the community. And one of the examples that you'll see here on the slide is this mention of the All of Us research program at NIH, which it basically has it's a database that has information about over 1 million subjects that research has been conducted on, and it's something that's used broadly by the medical and research community when they're thinking of the different types of research projects and grants that they're working on. So that's something that happens to be sponsored by NIH. But similarly, is there an agency in the federal enterprise or an organization even nationally that might be the right place to sort of sponsor and host this and continue to develop and make it even better for the long term? So that was our fourth recommendation. Jackie, did you have anything that you wanted to add? And in fact, I'll hand over the rest of the presentation to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Rob. I think that you pretty much covered it. Some of the organizations that we've been talking to, for everyone's, just for awareness, we're hoping we could partner with VA-NI and potentially do a federation of organizations, possibly the JAIC, and other organizations focused on emerging technologies. And so the conversation is ongoing. And we are hoping to receive more feedback on what that model or agency sponsor might look like. And we're excited by the conversations, and we're looking forward to collaborating with agencies through various mechanisms, whether it's in alignment with 13960 or otherwise, to upload these use cases and share them across the government. So we can go to the next slide. So we have a big push right now for 13960. We are really gathering these artificial intelligence use cases. We want to bring them to the NUCSL. We have a volunteer team who is happy to work with your team and make things seamless and easy. There's a variety of different ways we're uploading and submitting the use cases. And so you can reach out to us at actiacnusl@gmail.com for more information. Again, the platform is free. So all you have to do is request an account, we'll set it up, and once you have access, you'll have full ability to submit a use case, search use cases, and share them within your organization. And so we also have the NUCSL site linked on this slide. We have a user guide available. We're looking for volunteers to help with gathering the use cases, building out the platform. There will definitely be subsequent initiatives coming out of this. Some of the initiatives we're currently working on is a outreach campaign to chief data officers to gather their feedback and insights on how a tool like this can be best maintained over the short and the long term. And so that is happening over the next several months, and Lisa Zellers is leading that, and we'll speak to the tool more. We also have a survey, an emerging technology survey we'll be sending out in collaboration with the Department of Treasury to cover what does the forecast for emerging technologies look like across the government, and we'll have a focus on CTOs there. And then we are with 13960, that is our main priority right now, is to gather those use cases. And so any way we can work with your organization to do so, we are happy to dedicate a volunteer and upload those use cases and find a good way to share them, whether with your agency or publicly. So we can go to the next slide. And I will now pass it to Lisa to go through our customer journey maps and then talk a little bit more about some of the feedback we're hoping to gather. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, we're doing great on timing. I hope we're not talking too fast, but I feel like we're rapid speed NUCSL talking to everyone. So there's a couple of quick journey maps we go through just to explain tactically how you would use the NUCSL. So it's a database with a nice front end. You would go to the NUCSL homepage, click on the search bar, and you could review the NUCSL use cases and then reach out to the government representatives that are included in those entries. And again, we have some of the value statements here on the right-hand side, but the next slide talks about the opposite side of the coin, which is how to submit a use case via the NUCSL. Again, it's relatively simple. You have to request an account in order to submit use cases. But once you do that, then you can submit your use case on behalf of your federal agency or commercial entity or educational or entities as well. The next slide. So now that we are maturing past the pilot phase, we are looking at ways to drive adoption, and the search function and how you could search and slice and dice the different data and what metadata was captured is something that we've identified as a high priority item, as well as making the submission process easy. And again, making sure the taxonomy of what actual data fields we are defining and sharing for each use case aligns with how agencies would be able to use the data. And so with those three, ideas in mind, we've come up with a couple questions, and now I'm going to give everyone a 1-minute warning. We can either use the chat or come off of mute, but we'll try to make this as interactive as possible. So the first question that we are looking for is, what is the most important consideration for you as an acquisition position when determining whether or not to use an emerging technology, or when to look for an emerging technology when you're posed with a potential acquisition problem or a mission problem? So go ahead and come off mute or go ahead and use the chat. But we're looking for anybody on the phone to give us some feedback. I know this group normally isn't very shy.
And I see a few familiar names, Gisa. And I remember when I first joined ACT-IAC, I saw the periodic, the acquisition periodic table of elements, and was so inspired by your team. And so I feel like we're doing something a little bit similar, different topic, but it was great to see your team put that together. And I see Colin too, Sandy.
All right, so the next slide has a different question. Maybe this one will get a little bit more feedback. So what information could we provide in the use case to make it easier for agencies to determine when an emerging technology would meet the mission objectives? And again, we're just looking for any kind of feedback, either fields or types of information that you think would be helpful. So if you're going to try to decide whether or not an emerging technology, either which specific product or even which technology, category could be applied against a mission objective, what information could make that easier to make a decision? In the past, we've talked about having proof points. So the actual just being able to look through the database of examples of other agencies that had done something similar. So one of the pieces of early feedback we got was that each use case had to have a summary of the actual business case or what they were trying to solve, and that had to be searchable. So other than the business case or mission objective, are there other kinds of information that you think would be helpful?
Hey, Jay, you built one of the most innovative systems I've ever seen in my life for acquisitions. I don't think it's been equal to this date in government. Coming from that position and how deeply you've been involved with the GSA in solving not just their problems, but innovating for the GSA, what do you see? Please come off mute and tell us. Over.
Hey, good afternoon, Sandy. Thank you very much for appreciating my work done in GSA. I'm really happy to hear that, and that too after like 15 years. So definitely we are talking about something in like 2003, 2004. During that time, like building e-offer, which is an online offer system offer system getting built in GSA. It was really, I feel like, what do you call? I'm just like the team was very good team, both from a collaborative perspective, both from the business, IT, and the contracting shop. So all of us, we were collaboratively working together, and we were able to build that kind of system, which other agencies also could leverage it. I mean, it's like that was the first offer receival system, and then definitely we use a lot of emerging technology. Like digital certificate is one good example for that, where we have enabled digital certificate authentication and login for the vendors. And then DUNS was, of course, I know in other 4 days DUNS is going away, but we enabled DUNS, where the vendor community could be leveraging digital certificate level 3 ACES level 3 authentication, and then the DUNS for getting logging into the system and submitting a schedule offer. So definitely some of them, and also open systems. We went in using some of these Red Hat Linux environment, and a lot of open systems. So those are all emerging technologies at that time. Even from the front end view, we enabled a lot of XML driven technologies because solicitation template is just one template for schedule vendors, and different offers could be leveraging the same template but different information kind of stuff. So
that was helpful. I think I heard a couple things that we could maybe apply, like whether or not you use reusable or modular codes, even regardless of what technology. That's a different kind of information that would be helpful, I think, in the use case.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, we use template more. The modular was basically because of the XML things. Those are all XML templates. Like, just I don't want to go more technical, but at that point of time, we were talking about like 32 schedules. Now again, it is now consolidated. So 28 to 32 schedules using the same template. It is all modularized code where the requirements related to each schedule were different, but the code and the templates are being reused. So that's definitely, that is one thing. And of course, the authentication module is all like modularized, which could be leveraged by other systems. We were also some of the other things, like after eOffer went live, we were able to do a solicitation writing system, which actually leveraged some of the code of eOffer. So that's definitely, those are all some of the reusable artifacts.
That's interesting. And I don't know if we've satisfied that, like the idea that there are other, not just technologies, which is the basis for the NUCSL, but also what process-minded things did you do that also was innovative or allowed you to use that technology? So that's a really good piece of feedback. And what about the other kinds of questions are, what kinds of information or fields would an agency or a bureau, want to have as a basis of these use cases? I think the next slide says, I think if you can go to the next slide, do you guys have any feedback on whether or not the agencies and bureaus that you work at could use or would use a use case library? Like maybe for us on this phone call, where in the acquisition lifecycle do you think this would be most used? We kind of think that it would be during market research, so you have an established problem, but not necessarily an acquisition path. But we'd love to hear some feedback on when in the acquisition lifecycle do you think a use case library could be helpful. That might help us shape what we put in it as well.
Yeah, and hey, this is Colin from KPMG, and it's kind of going back to one of the earlier questions, but I can address that one as well. In terms of when, emerging tech, you kind of defined in the beginning, and it's a little broad, but, how broad is that? Are you looking for things that, maybe aren't in those buckets of what the working groups are? That's one question. And then the other kind of, in terms of what I've heard, I'm not at a federal agency, but working with them for a long while, is it seems like templates come up a lot while, they want to do the market research and it would be part of that official piece. It's like, how can we accelerate this? So is there one that we can just customize for what the specific need is, but a lot of these things generally are the same at their base, and then we can customize to what we specifically need. So is there kind of a intention to broaden that that piece of it, I guess.
Like the output that you would get, maybe like a report that would allow you to maybe speed up market research.
And then sort of the template specifically. I mean, I guess it's a question, is that the direction? Is it kind of doing the market research portion, or would maybe a next phase, or is the intended result of this is that I could go on there, I'm trying to implement blockchain for this specific use case. Could I go on and get a template to, for SOW or that sort of thing, kind of the next phase of the acquisition lifecycle?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like templates for acquisition deliverables or lifecycle documentation. That's interesting. I was only thinking market research, but even a statement of work. And this is where, Gisa, I think other people in the acquisition COI leadership team have also already drawn that connection with the acquisition periodic table. And that might be actually a really natural linkage or potential team effort where maybe I do think that the periodic table has some templates already, and maybe that's where we could maybe not reinvent the wheel, but make sure that we point to those templates versus, but I like the idea of the report output for multiple use cases could be in some kind of market research format. And then different from also then housing or providing templates for acquisition lifecycle language, right? That would include information from the use cases. Or again, I think the first phase is we'll give you the government POC. Hopefully they can help you out with that. But I really like that idea because then it's more of a self-serve, right? You don't have to wait and go through those or email or phone call kinds of conversations. So other than maybe now we've said market research and then maybe even to help you get started on an actual draft statement of work, are there other areas in the acquisition lifecycle that you think the use case library would be helpful?
I'll jump in and say some of the areas we've heard is really just being able to contact people who are working with these technologies, including artificial intelligence, intelligent automation, RPA, and blockchain, and knowing who to reach out to, who to ask for more information has been one of the key areas we've received feedback on. And then the other key area is when conducting market research and acquisition planning, there's questions around, what kind of language am I looking for, and what's the best way to describe these new technologies that are still being defined themselves, and what's a good way to go about doing so. And so those are really the two key areas we've been focused on. One of the other key areas we're discussing with the NUCSL working group is funding sources. For example, pilot programs, TMF, and other avenues where funds allotted to different research and pilot programs can help jumpstart a lot of these initiatives, so that for the different mission objectives that agencies are hoping to meet, you can find ways using emerging technologies to leapfrog ahead of where things are currently at to where you're hoping to go. And so those are just two examples, but we would love to hear if there's other areas that may be of interest.
All right, well, I think the next slide is our last, am I correct? Yep, thank you slide. So again, feel free to reach out to anyone that spoke today on the call or Nancy Delanoche as the COI liaison. If you're interested in learning more about the NUCSL, you can also go to the ACT-IAC website, and without creating an account, you can go in and search the couple of use cases that are out there in the environment now. And again, as you're working with agencies on the ground, if you think there are innovative use cases that could be contributed, let us know, and we can try to help collaborate with you to get that information uploaded so that people can use it as a successful use case in the future. And Jackie just put her email. Thanks, Jackie, in the chat as well if you're interested in coming to the working groups weekly meetings.
Absolutely. And I'll add just a lot of these, we've been doing a roadshow to all of the COIs. So we've presented to cyber, health, workforce development, and a lot of these efforts are really to plant the seeds for how can we answer these questions. And so they're big questions to solve. And if something comes up that makes you think of the NUCSL and we can be of help, or if you would like to join our weekly working group meetings, we're always looking for folks to include. So just let us know, and we're happy to send over more information as necessary. So we have a great team, and thank you to the folks on the call who are supporting the NUCSL team. I see Sandy and Lisa and Mike, and so we're looking forward to continuing the journey and learning more along the way.
All right, well, thank you so much and have a good day.